Airport voice. Airport voice. Wow, there's no one. Damn virus. Let's play the music. Flight 106 to Maui, and welcome to the show where we think about the time where we used to travel in planes. It's a show about nostalgia, and because of nostalgia, I had to invite a special, very special guest, someone who knows the inside and outs of the New Berlin airport even before it opens, someone who knows how to get toilet paper stock before they run out of shops, someone who will surely outlive Alitalia. He's the world's leading authority on bashing cruise ships and centrally unlocking window dims on Dreamliners. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alex Hunter.
Wow. Yes. Thank you for having me as a guest on this show. It's good to be back. It's good to be back. It's like sitting in an old armchair or putting on that, pair of trousers you put on at Thanksgiving to make sure that you can eat enough food. It is nice to be back. And thank you to everybody that reached out, and also to those wonderful and very, very interesting guests who took part in the conversation while I was gone. And of course, mostly, Paul, thanks to you for managing my absence with such grace and elegance that people, didn't even know I was gone.
I knew because I missed you. I missed our banter. So I'm so very happy that you are. How are you, buddy? Good?
Yeah, good. Really good. It's a very strange time to be coming back into this conversation, of course, which we get into a lot. But yeah,
yes.
Weird times.
So I did a cop out because I said Maui because you've been there, but the name of the airport is not actually Maui, but I don't know how to pronounce it.
I don't actually know how to pronounce it. I think it's Kahului. I think I'm missing a syllable there. I find the Hawaiian language fascinating and completely confounding. So I think it's Kahu'alui or Kahului, something like. Yeah. Anyway,
our second airport in Hawaii. Actually, we did Honolulu
ages ago.
I think 2 years ago. That's the only one I've been to there. I've never been to Maui. I'll just say Maui. Sorry. And we'll go to why the very strange IATA code. Because I was looking
nice
for
story
it,
there.
Really? OGG. I was like, I don't know, OGG, original, OG, the OG of the airport. So before we go to the evident, topic of the month, the weeks, the semester, or even like the year, you must be pretty happy that the cruise ships are completely effed.
I mean, it's like literally the perfect environment for that type of thing to just take hold and infect a bunch of people. I mean, we've seen it for years now where, the norovirus would just decimate a ship. But this is more serious. The good thing is it seems like, in a weird way, it's been this sort of isolation and incubation lab for people to study how it propagates in close quarters. And there was one anchored off the coast of California, off San Francisco for 2 weeks, and they had to airlift supplies in and everything like that. So it was yet another reason not to go on a cruise.
The only good thing is if you short the stock of these companies because you made a lot of money. A friend of mine did like a multiplied by 5. He was shortening some of the stocks, and that was a good. I know a lot of countries are actually outrightly banning those cruise ships to dock altogether. So but anyway, before we go into that virus story, lots of change, of course, since the last time you were with me on this show. So I have 2 news for you. One will make you very happy. United, I know you don't fly United, but if you were to fly again, United has asked cabin crew to stop controlling the dimming windows of the Dreamliner. Essentially, they say, allow the passengers to do whatever they want. This is cool.
I mean, I understand why they dim them at certain points of a flight en masse, so the whole cabin atmosphere changes, especially when it's supposed to be time to sleep. What I get frustrated by is then when they're locked.
That's what management is asking to do. Do not lock the system centrally.
I wonder if they're able to restrict the dimness. So if you say they're unlocked, but they can't be fully open, which I would kind of understand. That would certainly appease people like me, but that's interesting that they've had such a volume of feedback that they've made that change.
Exactly. Or they just listen to layovers in New York. Well,
that's more likely.
Exactly. And the second news, I hinted at it in the intro I did about you, is that Berlin seems to be actually happening, because Lufthansa has actually scheduled flights on October 31st, which is apparently the soft opening date, for a full opening on November 8th. It's pretty unbelievable.
It is.
You said yourself that you were not believing it, and I wasn't believing it either. But it seems that it will open. I don't know. It's strange time.
It is strange times. And it's interesting that it's a third party setting a date for their move in, as opposed to the airport authority or anybody on behalf of the airport saying this is going to be the open date. It's an airline saying this is when we're going to shift. And it's all of their operation, right? It's not just a test. This is when we're going to start flying out of that airport.
And remember, when we did both of the airports of Berlin, Tegel and Schönfeld, Lufthansa doesn't fly there. They send Eurowings. I mean, Lufthansa does fly, of course. But I'm wondering now if they will actually have proper operations as Frankfurt and Munich. Because
see.
they don't really so far. So I still cannot believe it. I mean, I don't know. I just can't believe that this is going to happen. And we had that running joke. So who's going to arrive first? Will Italia fail first? It seems that they will never fail. Will the MAX arrive first or Berlin arrive? So these two are still in the contention, because the MAX could arrive before Berlin. I don't know. It's really because with strange times we're living, I don't know.
Logic has gone out the window. So all bets are on or off. It depends on where you sit. Geez.
I want to give a big up to Andrew Curran. He's a writer for a site that we both read quite often called Simple Flying. And he actually quoted us, mentioned us, which is very nice, exactly on that topic, because we were saying, who's going to be first, the MAX or Berlin. And, well, he said that we did put our money on the MAX coming first. We still have a shot at that. Andrew, I know you're based in northern New South Wales in Australia. Hi, Australia friends. We will maybe have an Australian episode coming up at some point this year. Maybe. So, Andrew, you will have it. His favorite airline is Singapore Airlines. You have very good taste, Andrew.
I was going to say, fair enough.
I'm just wondering, what's your airport? Because you say northern New South Wales. Brisbane is probably close to you, but that's already Queensland, I believe. So which one is it? Andrew, just reach out to us. And thank you for listening. And since I'm on Simple Flying, they also have now a podcast. It's a very cool podcast as well. Everybody's doing podcasts, Alex. We're the OK boomers of podcasts now, because we're like the OG, and everybody does podcasts. It's a very cool. I think they started early Feb. They also have these kind of 30 minutes once a week type of schedule, which is really cool for those who don't want to listen to us banter for 2 hours every odd weeks that we do this. So Simple Flying, you can find it on Apple Podcasts and everywhere, and it's a super cool. Bravo, guys! Congratulations. The more the merrier. Since we're talking about OK Boomer of AvGeek Podcast ourselves, 2 reviews. First, on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars. Thank you. The title is "Where Has This Been All My Life?"
Oh, that's nice.
From BCAS11 from the US. These guys are awesome. The content is always amazing. Well, thank you so much. They really open up the world to people through their travels. I'm not traveling. And personal experiences. I love their personalities. This podcast is great for any AV geek, such as myself, or someone who loves travel. Thank you so much. And the second one is from Ruddy in MSP. I guess, of course, Minneapolis, which we now covered, as you heard, Alex. Great details on global airlines. 5 stars. Great show. I always enjoy your shows and look forward to the next one. It's interesting to hear where you have been and the airlines you've flown on. Quick question. Obviously, I love it that people use reviews to ask this question. I'm looking at booking a trip to Rome on American Airlines with miles and seem to be able to get a much better rate if I add a stop in either Madrid on Iberia or London on BA. Would you recommend this? And if so, which city and airline? Well, man, really, going to Rome today? Not sure.
Yeah, I don't think that your experience would be quite what you'd hoped it would be.
But what would you do for when and if all this stops? Because Italy, for those who don't keep track, Italy is on a full lockdown. So, I mean, I know that Ryanair still flies to Stansted from Rome, but besides that, I think no one flies there. Would you, if you were in the US, would you fly direct with AA? Would you prefer Iberia via Madrid? I know our love for Narnia. And or via Heathrow with BA?
I don't know the Iberia long-haul product. In fact, I don't really know the short-haul product either. So I don't know. But between the two, I would still go AA in premium and above, but BA in economy.
Yeah. And if you really want to do a stop, so meaning if AA is out of the question, BA, I think it's still a better choice. And because you would not be changing a terminal at Heathrow, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think so. I know some people might disagree, and it's not we don't hate Iberia. I think their long-haul product, I've done it because I've done to Madrid, 340, I think. Yeah, it's okay. There's no awkward, like looking at each other as the BA business product, for instance, but it's okay. But I think BA is still better. So, how's your flu, Alex?
Well, yeah. I'm just waiting for the inevitable. That's all I can do. That's all any of us can do, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's so strange, man. China Eastern has introduced a new coronavirus class, so on top of business class, premium economy, coronavirus. So the last 3 row of the starboard side of their aircraft will be reserved for those who show potential signs of sickness. Now, it's not called the coronavirus class. That's me actually making that up, but they are actually segregating a bit of the aircraft for people that might have signs of sickness. I don't know how that works, but yeah.
Is it people that develop the symptoms during the flight? Because surely you shouldn't be traveling if you already have the symptoms. And maybe an epidemiologist would be able to tell us if this is a complete waste of time. It feels like a complete waste of time.
Yeah. I said in my very long intro in the previous episode, I'm sorry, guys, it was 30 minutes of me ranting that, you shouldn't be flying if you're sick. Even James Bond, for crying out loud, is postponed. My God, I'm so unhappy about that. That was, if we were not traveling, at least seeing James Bond in a month would have been cool. But no, we don't even get that.
Well, you can't go. I mean, you're not supposed to go to the movie theater anyway.
Yeah, that's what we're doing right now, Alex and I. We're social distancing.
Yeah,
we're watching each other.
I don't know, man. I think I have a less apocalyptic view than this, or more there's very little I can do about it.
That's very true, however. I think that's very true. I mean, being mindful is not being panicky. And I see people being panicky, and I think that, we'll come to that. Actually, you know what? Planes are becoming the safest place for social distancing because they're empty.
Yeah, and the prices are dropping. I think what we see on social media is the extreme cases where there's 4 people on a flight to wherever it may be. But the data is now emerging too that's showing that these flights are tanking, and now these reports are coming out that airlines are running, Virgin and BA are running empty flights just to keep the slots alive.
We'll come to that. Yeah, I think.
But it's not. I think it was of all of the industries that could suffer the most initially. Who knows what the future holds? Travel and particularly airlines were going to be the ones that got hit hardest.
Yeah, exactly. I was in an Uber the other day, social distancing, so you're not taking the tube. No, the driver is telling me he was talking to some management at the Marriott on Park Lane in London, telling him that all the bookings until end March were cancelled, so the hotel would be empty. No, I say it's not a fun situation. Actually, Han Chicago, one of our listeners, sent us a picture of him flying Malaysian Airlines from Narita to KL. And he was the only person in business class on the 350-900. It's insane.
I've got a flight coming up, a few actually, in 10 days, and I'm very interested to see what the loads are like.
That is, if you fly. Sorry. Do not reveal the destination because that's one of the surprises.
I shan't. No, I won't. But it's a mixture of things. So I'll be, and quite a few segments. So it'll be interesting to see what the loads are like. And if you want to go somewhere, prices are,
To a certain extent, because I believe that it's true that my Google flight track prices are crashing, which is good, but not to the extent I was thinking they could crash. And I think is because of the uncertainty. Some of the airlines learned the hard way. I think BA a few years ago, was it during the financial crisis? They lowered their price significantly to attract, of course, customers flying. But then if the economy or here the economy recovers quickly, then they sold all these tickets forward for too cheap. That's why they are reducing the price, but not still rock bottom prices, because they're suddenly if Alex and Paul can fly basically for free next year and the situation is good, then they have an issue.
Yeah.
So it's in between. But it's true that some destinations, particularly
transatlantic to New York, I mean, even California in the summer, I've seen a significant drop in price.
Oh, have you? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So, I think the airlines are planning for this. We'd rather have people in seats and flights operating at discounts rather than peak fares than not having anybody at all.
Yeah.
I just cannot imagine being in revenue management right now. I don't envy anybody in that role trying to make these decisions. And how far into the future do you discount? And yeah, awful. I mean, even flights less than 30 days out to places that ordinarily are peak because of the Easter holidays are very, very accessible.
The other case is when we see that happening is that if you're part of any frequent flyer program, the reward availability is super high. The prices of this reward is also crashing because there's another way to attract people to fly. And they know that people that have like you and me, who have a certain number of points, will be probably attracted by those super cool deals. Like I was able to find insane business class reward flights to Japan. And although Japan, I mean, it's not into lockdown and it's still okay.
Yeah.
But even simply saying, I might use that for, I don't know, the end of the summer. Because, why not?
It would be very interesting to see, like, if you can just grab a flight to somewhere that you want to go when you think this is all going to be over and done with. If you buy a reasonably flexible fare because it's so cheap and you can just change it to the dates you actually need.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you're making. Some of the airlines are currently waiving the change fees, so the rebooking dates, but that's usually only for this month currently. I think some of them extended to next month. So ironically, if you bought a ticket at the end of February, you still have to pay the change fee. So that's a bit bad, meaning that it's more a way to attract people to say, hey, guys, still buy your flights. And if you're too concerned closer to the date, we'll waive you the change fee to push that forward. They probably will prolong those. But, again, if we, like you said, if I take a relatively flexible flight, if it's like $100, $200 to change for a long haul flight, I might actually do it. Because
me too.
Then I can just invent some dates, and like if I'm not planning to go there this date, I just push it back for 2 months, and maybe. I haven't decided yet. It's to a certain times. Everything is getting canceled anyway right now. So for work, we're both of us are of course Dutch, so it's very hard to plan.
It's very hard. It's very hard to plan it because people are panicking, and each environment and each country is reacting in different ways at a governmental level, a local authority level, and also at a societal level as well.
Yeah. Yes.
For better or worse.
Hence my joke about the bog rolls, the toilet paper at the start is like in some Australia apparently is a big thing. I was just actually talking just before we went on here to record. By the way, we're recording this on the 11th of March, 2020. I was on a call with someone from Sydney. Of course, it was late at night for him, and he was telling me it's crazy. People are just buying toilet paper, which to me is maybe not the first thing I would buy in the event of the rapture, the end of the world.
Yeah.
I would buy food, maybe, canned food, like long-term food or whatever. But I think it's more like people kind of need to do something. Mm-hmm. So it's like a reassuring because, toilet paper is something you will use it anyway at some point. So you do that and you say, oh, I've done something. But did you stock up?
I've not stocked up on anything. No. And although it's interesting, I did a grocery shop yesterday in our local grocery store, and that aisle was thin but not bare at all. So
where I live is have like smaller type of shops because it feels like a small village. I mean, London feels like a small village, and 2 of the 3 had no more pasta. And it's been 3 days in a row, there's no pasta. And I'm like, what the hell? So, I mean, not that I wanted to stock up, but just, I mean, human psychology is strange.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah. Well, and also it's seeing, people, there's probably one person on social media a few weeks ago who was like, I just went down to the store and bought 30 days worth of toilet paper or 5 months or whatever. And then that just snowballs and it could have been anything. It could have been, pasta or whatever. But it's amazing how we, how these things work.
It's very interesting because we all have the same, probably at a certain level, the whole same reaction is like, imagine we're a group of 50 people and you and me are in that group. And suddenly you see the first 5 actually buying a lot of toilet paper and then 10. At some point, it hits you like, shouldn't I do the same? Because
Yeah,
it's
well,
not because it's
exactly.
necessary. If everybody around me does it, maybe I'm going to be the only one odd out,
doesn't,
and
yeah.
I will. Yeah, so it creates these kind of very strange dynamics, and probably for flying, since we're talking about flying, it is a bit of the same here. Like I understand the fear probably about flying, especially the destination, not flying itself. But there's something to be said about probably like, should I go? Should I go? And we're seeing that you just mentioned Easter holidays. This is currently, I have lots of friends who work in the travel industry, basically travel agents. They're getting all these calls from people that are like, should I fly? Should I not fly? Should I cancel? Should I not go? And they would lose their money because they bought, like non-refundable flights like a month ago to go with their family somewhere. It's not an easy... I understand, you're lacking, nobody knows. So you're lacking information, and that creates this kind of like, all my neighbors are canceling their holidays. Maybe should I do that as well? Right?
It's a strange human reaction to situations like this, especially I think, and I'm sure that we've got maybe we don't have sociologists that listen to us. It's one of those things that is just innate in our behavior, that we react in such a way in times of panic, especially when we don't feel like we have enough information, real, trustworthy information.
And also for something that is unseen. You cannot touch it. A virus, you don't see it, right? If there's a dinosaur running down your street, or dinosaurs are extinct, but you know what I mean? There's something that you can say, oh, I've seen it. I will have my body react to an actual fear that I can actually witness. Here is like, it's in the air somewhere, and we're not even sure how. I mean, the scientists are telling us how, but I mean, is it 1 meter of separation? Is it good enough? Should I not meet anyone for the next 3 months? It's so hard to know. I mean, there's been images, very interesting in China. I've seen elevators putting, sticker tape on the floor, and they say, these big fat elevators for very tall buildings. So they usually could accommodate up to maybe 20 people. And the sticker tape says, only 4 people, and you all stay in your corner. Or in Italy now, you go to having a coffee, and it's only 2 people at a time. Go grab the, how they do in Italy, you go grab the coffee at a bar, quick espresso, ristretto, and then you go out. All these mixed signals is hard. But let's go back to aviation. I said in the opening of 105 that it would be a catastrophe, and I said the IATA was underballing all this when they said it was 30 billion, and now they revise the numbers and they say catastrophically that in the best case scenario they think the airline industry will lose about $60 billion. In the worst case scenario, meaning this drags out, it's around 120 billion. These numbers by themselves mean nothing, but basically it's worse than 9/11 in terms of the drop of passenger demand. We've seen many airlines, I think United this morning said they were expecting, in a worst case scenario again, a drop of 70%. And we're talking about the US, which is slightly on a tape delay compared to Europe, because of course, if you just look at the spread, not only of the virus, but of these human reactions, it feels that the US is slightly on a tape delay in terms of how the people are reacting to this compared to Europe, and us compared to Asia, obviously. Minus 70%. That's crying out loud, And I want to state, we want to state, I'm going to say that for you as well, before we go into a little bit more. My biggest biggest worry is, of course, all the employees of the airlines, the airports.
Of course.
I mean, that's because
you're already seeing voluntary unpaid leave. You're going to see furloughing pretty soon. And the CEO of Delta said in a press conference recently that he sees government bailout as inevitable for across the industry, not just in the U.S.
Yep.
And I think, we're already starting to see airlines, really coming under a lot of pressure and cracking as well, which is frightening for many, many reasons. And of course, people's livelihoods are at stake, not, directly and indirectly. I mean, to an extent, those that travel for work will be affected. But of course, as you say, the frontline staff and just staff in general, people who work and support airlines in the aviation industry, they got to be, up at night wondering what the hell's going to happen, because they don't know any more than we do. And nobody really knows anything.
The only thing we can witness, and the airlines are witnessing, is people are not flying. So, the demand is very soft. That's an understatement. People are not booking. It was quoted, I think, by the Air Current, the site from, what's his name again? Yeah. And he said that he had heard a Middle Eastern manager of an airline, so probably one of the ME3, saying It's like 9/11, only that people still can fly. They just don't decide to. And the similar analogy was used by Kelly, the CEO of Southwest, who said also, this feels like 9/11. The numbers, however, and IATA has come up, are showing a bigger crash in 9/11 in demand. So in actual bookings being received by airlines. And that's, 9/11 was big, but this seems to be also worldwide. Like the fear is everywhere.
Yeah, and it's domestic, it's international, it's intercontinental, it's regional, it's everything. It's everything. Yeah. And with 9/11, the response was obviously primarily focused on the U.S., not exclusively, but a domestic route in rural Australia was probably less at risk for that. But now it's universal. People are
absolutely everywhere
afraid. And I think that's not something that we've experienced before. And no one knows what's going to happen or how to respond or anything like that. So it's a very, very weird time.
Yeah. So I said on the beginning of 105, I mean, guys, if you want to have like an overview of, I think everything that I said still stand. I'm not here boasting. I don't find any satisfaction of having been right. I said the Geneva car show would be canceled, and it's been canceled. Everything is getting canceled, basically.
Getting canceled.
I said they were, and that was one of the reasons I canceled my own trip to Japan, although I would have, now thinking again, I would have still gone, but I said that airlines would stop flying there, and it's happening. United, others are basically stopping flying there altogether, meaning the hassle for me is the issue here. It's not the virus. It's like you go somewhere and then you are stuck in a lockdown. It happened to me, a friend. I was telling you the story last night, Alex. A friend of mine lands in Europe, arrives in Europe from Asia, is being told by France, I think, that, well, we're not sure we can let you in, and then he wants to go back. So he's in the airport, wants to go back, and, well, you've been to France now. And these situations are more problematic that the virus itself is, because these decisions are going very quickly on so many levels, an airport level or local level, government level. It seems that all the visa agreements are going out of the way, or visas are suddenly put, like Vietnam just added visa requirement for British citizens, which wasn't the case for a long time. These hassles keep continuing, and so we'll see more route shutdowns, more airport hassle. There was I don't know if you've seen, there was pictures of Delhi. You've been to Delhi? Yeah, we've covered it. 6 hours to get into the airport, as in deplaning, because now they do temperature checks, plus they ask you to fill you a paper. But then you're like, so you're going to be stuck for 6 hours with like thousands of people in an airport. And that's exactly the opposite of what you should do in terms of social distancing, if that's a thing that we should do. So it's all becoming, so all these hassles add up and add up and add up. Even like Qatar is taking like very strange decisions. They basically banned, I think, more than 40 countries from entering the country, but they still allow them to transit at Doha, which business-wise I understand, because they don't want to kill Qatar Airways. But that doesn't make any sense then, because, people are going to be... Anyway, yeah. This is the thing. We all have like these uncertainties about what's going to happen in a certain airport. Will we be accepted or not? Whatever. By the way, it's not only Iran and Italy. Hong Kong is banning some French and German citizens. El Salvador is banning outright anyone who's been to France or Germany. So we're talking also about countries which have increased their cases, but are not on the spotlight like Italy is, or Iran is, or obviously China was, or South Korea. It's and it also creates that thing. I mean, I've heard a lot again from my friends and travel agents. Thailand is a very potent destination for tourism, and people love to go to Thailand. They advertise themselves as that for the past 30 years. And now Thailand is mulling whether or not to impose quarantine on entry for some people, but they haven't announced it. So you're like, am I going to book for Thailand if in 2 weeks they decide that people coming from Europe have to be quarantined for 14 days?
Yeah.
Israel basically forcing everyone who enters to quarantine for 14 days, no matter where they come from. Again, we're not PR scientists or doctors, but business-wise, they're clearly killing the entry, because would you go if you know that you have to stay for 14 days?
It's impossible.
No!
It's impossible. And, it seems to be one of those things where some of these countries or regions or whatever are taking the nuclear option and hoping that it either protects them. We all know borders are porous, but I think that, they're taking this in a way to try and stop or stem the spread of this. It remains to be seen. I think China is an example of not doing the lockdown at this level, but doing much more prevention, same with Hong Kong, same with Singapore, prevention and detection and treatment at a rapid level. But I mean, I still think we're dealing with an unknown here. And again, like this is not something I know anything about. And frankly, to be completely honest, haven't done any more reading on than I would on anything else. I don't know why. I kind of, it's not that I don't care. It's just like, you know, there's a few other things going on in the world. Like you said, you and I are seeing gigs getting canceled and, you know, if I'm going to get this, I'm going to get this. But it is fascinating. It is fascinating if it wasn't so scary. And I don't even know if it's scary, to be honest with you.
No, it's not scary. That's the thing. And by the way, that's probably even the worst thing, because if it was truly scary, like you get it, you're going to be dead. At least we would know, okay, I'm going to isolate or something, or I'm going to do something about it. Here's this kind of, if you get it, you should be fine. But the problem is that you could be a vector for someone who's elderly around you. And that is my moral, probably, at least for me, I decided that's my moral duty not to give it. But then it's kind of this kind of middle of the way thing. So it's not like scary. It's like worrisome, you know? Like,
And in a way, not in a way, as a matter of fact, I mean, for so many people, life has to go on. We have to go about our day to day, whether we like it or not. And, you know,
and you and me are lucky in a way. I mean, we're not lucky because we're seeing clearly our business will suffer. Both of us, we are in some state. For those who, because it seems like we're talking without having an audience here, but for those who don't know us, we have similar lines of businesses. Some of the stuff overlaps, some of the stuff doesn't. We're both going to get hit to a certain level, so it's no fun. But when I say we were lucky, is that at least we don't have to go to an office at 8 a.m. every morning.
Or public transport, exactly.
Or public transport. We work mostly from our places, and then we travel when we need to, which probably will be less often now for a little while. But meaning that whole self-isolation or, social distancing thing, we're basically doing it by default almost. So we don't even have to worry about that. You don't have to take a crowded subway in the morning. So these are things that we're lucky in that part. The rest, I mean, we're not, because clearly our life will be, or business lives are affected by this. Anyway, and we had talking about, people who work in the travel industry. We had Alex Ostoike at Perestroika. Perestroika 85 on Twitter. As I'm working in the industry, I'm currently more afraid of the economic consequences of this crisis than of the virus itself. People are already losing their jobs because of it. And if the situation will not get better rather quick, I'm afraid many more will be laid off. Yeah. And
I think that's inevitable.
But like you, I obsessed a bit about this story. I read a lot. Hence my early decisions and not being surprised at what's happening now. This is what I said in 105, and I stand by what I said in 105. I called it. And I'm calling now that the numbers of IATA are still low. This is worse and worse. Like the virus, the domino effect is accelerating. Drastic borders bans will happen at a fast click, man. I'm sure I can guarantee you the US will go nuclear when they decide to. I see airports closing. I see countries closing. I see cities closing. I see even more reductions in routes and flights that is expected today. I mean, the numbers are drastic, but this will be worse. This is worse than a catastrophe. This, for the airline world and the world in general, might very well be the worst recession since World War II. I hope I'm wrong. Anyway. So of course, a lot of it has to do with the virus, but I wanted to kind of mix it up and not only talk just about, the fears and whatever. So one of the consequences of that is obviously of the reduction in demand is, to me, an accelerant of the demise of the 380. Lufthansa was, and that's insane, by the way, Lufthansa was grounding half of its fleet. And Lufthansa Group, that means, Swiss and Austrian and everyone, half of its fleet. 50% of its fleet are grounding all their 380s. Qantas is grounding all the 380s but one. Singapore, some of them. Etihad hasn't announced anything, but you cannot track the 380 for the past 3 days, so it's probably grounded. China Southern, obviously, because they're in China. Korean, all of them, 10 are grounded. Asiana are parked them all. And Air France, at least 2 of 3 have gone silent, so they're probably grounded. Emirates is the only one, meaning Emirates, of course, they have no choice and they will keep flying them. But I'm thinking, because we were talking about that when you were with me a few months ago, that, we'll still see it for the next 10 years or whatever. Do you think, that's an open question, do you think that once these airlines ground them, no matter, the virus at some point will get back to normal? Do you think they will fly them? Do you think they will fly them again?
Yeah.
Do you think so?
I think so. I really do. I think that there'll be enough demand to, or resurgence in demand. Maybe not immediately bring them all back online, but I think the only reason why they are able to is because they have reduced capacity on other routes and can reassign those aircrafts to pick up the slack of grounding the A380s. If the world comes back even remotely to normal and they need to reinstate many of those routes, they won't have the option to not fly the 380 anymore. One hopes that we learn these lessons. I mean, I've got flights on Etihad coming up very, very soon, and they're still showing us 380s.
Oh, okay. Good. Good.
But who knows what's going to happen when I actually show up at the airport? Whether it'll just be like
you could have
bus.
you could have a Dreamliner, and the Dreamliner is very cool. I've used it. The studio seat is very nice. ANA on the opposite side is launching their third 380.
Yeah.
They're very cute ones in advance. So by June you'll have only 380s from Japan from Tokyo to Honolulu. So basically very close to the destination airport of this episode. So that they are very cute. So
those paint jobs are just wonderful.
Ed Parsons, thank you again, Ed, for hosting us in our previous episode. And Alex is going to be with us. We're going to do others of these like fan shows. Ed said for the 380, because of the oil prices that are tanking, that's the other thing, because there's a price war between Russia and Saudis. So basically, not going to politics, but the price of oil is crashing literally, which is a silver lining for the airlines because suddenly kerosene is cheaper. He says maybe it's a good way for BA to buy more secondhand 380s because they need them because of Heathrow.
Yeah, although BA seem to be able to magically pull Heathrow slots from their butts. Like we saw. I don't know if you're going to come onto this, and forgive me if you are, but
no, go ahead.
We just saw Air New Zealand pay sell a slot for $28 million.
Yeah,
we don't know to who, because they're ditching, which they announced a while ago, back in October, that they're ditching that Heathrow LA route, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But they sold that slot for $28 million, and so there's this. Apparently, we don't hear about all of these, but it happens all the time, hundreds and hundreds per year. But then. I'm going blind. The sun's coming out.
You're not seeing this, but I'm seeing Alex, of course, on the video, and he has the window on top of him, and suddenly the sun came out, which is very rare these days in the UK. And there was no more Alex. I only saw like a sea of white just because of the sun.
Nuclear fallout. But then yesterday or day before, it was announced that Heathrow got 12, or BA got 12 Heathrow slots, and that was getting the Flybe ones.
Yeah, because that was a very interesting one, because it was like, why would BA get them? And actually, because when BA bought BMI, part of the agreement was to say, since there's consolidation in the market a long time ago, part of the agreement for antitrust reasons was to say you have to give out parts of your own slots to a competitor, which turned out to be Flybe. Flybe disappears, and we'll get to that also a little bit later. Thus, they magically return to BA. So BA has suddenly like a lot of more slots, which seems unfair for the other airlines, but that was part of the deal. So it's not like they gave them to BA.
And it will be interesting to see what they do with them.
Especially now.
I was going to say, especially now.
I mean...
God, who knows?
So to finish on the 380, if you go on aviationtag.com, you can own a part of the first ever 380 that is being scrapped. It's the Singapore Airline one. This company, they do key rings and keychains and stuff like that. If you like that kind of stuff, they are currently selling, and it's pretty cheap, I think $30 or whatever for a keychain, which is an original part of the 380 with a metal and everything. It's pretty fun if you're into this. If you're like a heavy AV geek, at least you can own part of a 380, which is not bad. Delta, talking about another aircraft that is disappearing, this one is Delta might retire early their MD-88 and 90s because of the fall of demand as well. And we're not big fans, you and me, of this one, but I realized that a lot of people are, because when I put that on Twitter, on our lay_overs account, people reacted. The 340 is also being retired with more haste. Virgin is retiring their 340 600s. They had three. And it's actually super ironic, because late last year, they were saying we were supposed to retire them by December 2019, but we actually need them. And now they're like, well, bye-bye.
Yeah, I think they needed them because of the Trent issues. I mean, we still see Virgin Dreamliners just sitting there engineless at Heathrow. But yeah, the 346 of all of the 340 variants, which there weren't that many, was by far my favorite because it looked weird, first of all, because it was so super long and gangly. But also, it wasn't unpleasant to fly, and it was really quiet for an airplane of that generation. I mean, now we're obviously into 380s and Dreamliners and 350s that are just so unnervingly and wonderfully quiet.
Unnervingly quiet. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, the 380, when you're on the upper deck on a 380 and it's taking off, you're like, surely it should be louder if we're going to break the bonds of gravity here.
Yeah, and it seems that you're never actually taking off or landing. You're like, we're like just floating.
Yeah, which is quite a nice sensation.
So back to a few more numbers about the virus, because I need to mention, you haven't seen, Alex, because you weren't with us, but we keep talking about U.S. airports, and we're doing one more actually in this one. It's amazing. And so we have, of course, a huge bumpy U.S. audience. So to see that the virus also affects, and we kept mentioning since the start of this show, Delta has announced that they will reduce capacity by, I think, more than 10% internationally and 8% domestically. United has already cut capacity and will cut international capacity by 20%. Southwest said that the company's revenues would fall by as much as $300 million. Oh my God. You know what? They might not need the MAXs after all, because the MAX is on the ground. We don't need them right now. So it gives more time to the FAA and Boeing to sort these out. And Zane Zanengi, who is one of our longtime listeners on Instagram, tells me he's seen Delta 350s being shifted from the Asia routes, because of course they don't need them, to flying military passenger charters out of the Middle East. That's interesting.
Wow. That is interesting.
Also, and it's smart, actually smart. I mean, let's use these planes so that we have to do something actually useful with them, right?
And you have to think, I mean, just thinking a little further down the chain, you've got all those airlines and charter companies that are dependent on traffic for the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca.
I think it's canceled.
Exactly. So
sorry.
These companies, like, that's their like bumper period from all over the world. And can they last?
Yeah, exactly.
Are they going to survive?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll get to a few of the companies at risk in a while, but honestly, I don't. Even, sorry guys, because there's so many things here and we're jumping back and forth because there's like no way to actually address this like by chapters or anything. You just mentioned that you were finding like some good routes to San Francisco from London. Yeah. But I mean, even BA reduced their number of flights to JFK, and we know that London JFK is the most profitable route ever. So if BA reduces their golden goose, there's something clearly. And by the way, I was supposed to be in New York actually today and tomorrow, and I'm not. I'm here talking with you from London. I was still tracking the prices to New York. I simply left the thing on. They didn't really go down that much. Actually, maybe because there's less flights going.
There's less capacity, yeah. So in a way, that might have been a pretty smart move. I would be interested to see that traffic relative to other of maybe the top 50 routes in the world.
We might actually get those numbers.
I think we probably will.
Qantas is also announcing a reduction, I think by almost a quarter for the next 6 months. So they expect that this to last a bit. Of course, the biggest reductions to Asia, which is a big market for them, obviously, but also within Australia into Tasmania. I mean, it's part of Australia, but next door. But they are, and that's interesting, they are doubling the Perth to London route. Means that I'm guessing people in these times of uncertainty, they say, I don't want to stop in Singapore. I'd rather go direct.
Yes.
Maybe.
I'm sure I don't know if that's enough to sustain more capacity, but it's obviously this is proving to be a popular route. We know that Ed's done it. That flight.
Lucky you, Ed.
I still can't imagine what that's like, but yeah, it's an interesting one. And I read today a rumor that BA is briefing its pilots already for London, Melbourne, on the 350-1000.
Oh, wow.
When that comes online. So, and there is a lot of talk around that route of London, Sydney, London, Melbourne. I mean, that's interesting they picked that route. But so you're right. Perhaps this has spurred on those conversations where people don't want to stop in Asia if it takes a long time to eradicate this completely.
Maybe. By the way, I have no insights into that. It was just interesting that they're reducing everything, but announcing the doubling of that route at the same time. So maybe they simply have capacity. Air New Zealand, as well as is also, I think, slashing by 25%, so a quarter at least. The executives are taking a pay cut, which is something we've seen over and over. Like a lot of executives are taking a pay cut. It is a bit symbolic, but also means that something is, of course, happening. Singapore Airlines also, the executives also taking a pay cut. AirAsia X, who in Asia, is deferring the 330 news deliveries. They're going to say, we're going to use the R321s for the moment. But have you seen what they came up with? So they came up with that unlimited pass. So the unlimited pass is basically you pay around £90, so it says what, $110. I don't know the exact exchange rate. For 1 year, you're allowed to fly for free. I mean, for free, for that price. Almost like, buffet as much as you want thing. And you can fly only, it's already cool, from Malaysia. You have to be a resident of Malaysia to Australia, China, India, Japan, and South Korea. Obviously, when they started, none of these destinations were the ones.
I would love to see the terms of that and whether or not this is... I keep reading reports in Banter about that these guys are in a really bad way.
That's exactly what my thinking is like, did they not introduce this as part of knowing that they have to kind of find cash and finance somewhere? And they say, look, buy like a yearly in advance, 100 quid for flights that you want, so they get cash infusion right now. They currently, to your point, actually, I've checked yesterday, you can find some of the routes you can fly for free. Without that pass, you can fly almost for free. You just have to pay taxes. So I think you can do KL to Melbourne for like $20. Wow. And you can do, there was a flight that was like $3. And you're like, if you do this, it means that probably it's not just out of courtesy to your passengers. They may be reeling. They may be very, very close to the brink.
It definitely feels like they are.
Yeah.
That's what, I mean, they've even come out and said it. They did I think the PowerPoint is available online that they're just really struggling at the moment. And so they're, like you said, they're deferring and they're reallocating and they're reducing capacity. So.
And another thing that obviously I didn't think about at first with that virus thing is the cost of cleaning the planes has only kind of risen up a lot. So Vietnam Airlines, take one example, had recently a flight from London to Hanoi, happened to be that one of the passengers was a super spreader, apparently someone was more infectious than on average. By the time they landed, they had 7 people were infected by the virus. Again, they were not going to die, probably not, but I mean, it's not reassuring for the passengers. So the airlines, of course, are like also kind of putting a lot of messaging into how they do this. And so Vietnam Airlines is now cleaning the plane on every turn, which I cannot imagine the cost of actually doing that. Korean Air is doing the same. All the flights are being cleaned out, but Korean Air almost doesn't fly anymore, sadly. Turkish didn't do that at first, and what they had to do, they flew a flight empty back from Singapore because they didn't clean it. So they said, we're going to fly empty. And by the way, the crew was quarantined in Singapore because of that potential infection. So it creates a lot of... Emirates, to make that story short, Emirates actually has come out with videos on how they clean the planes. And these are super interesting.
They are deep cleaning them every time.
Yeah, so they have 2 sets of cleaning. They have the enhanced cleaning, as they call it, which takes... They said an hour at every turn, and it's like, what is it? Hold on, I've written it down here somewhere. 18 trained cleaners for 777 and 36 for a 380. That takes around an hour. And if there is a suspicion of someone that could have had the virus in a flight, they do a deep clean, and that takes 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Imagine the cost. But then again, they have no choice because that's also part of them to encourage people for flying.
Yeah, reassuring.
Telling them, hey, look,
yeah.
It's well. So the airline's at risk. In South Korea, clearly both Asiana and Korean Air are at risk. Actually, Korean Air said it. They said they cut more than 80% of their capacity. So basically, they're almost not 80%.
Incredible, isn't it?
Probably we'll see a too big to fail scenario here. Probably they will get, like you said earlier, infusion. Cathay, clearly, I mentioned it in the last episode. Cathay is also, I mean, just look at the pictures of Hong Kong airport. They have all the planes parked on the great for photography, but not great for I think 75% reduction. Will they get a too big to fail package?
Yeah, they will. And also,
do you think so? Okay.
the CAA in Hong Kong has relaxed slot restrictions so
Yes.
that they don't lose them if they don't fly them, which absolutely makes sense because this notion of flying around empty planes is preposterous.
Yeah, I mean, we can address that right now. This is exactly what happens in Europe, and you've seen, so it's use it or lose it. And in Europe, that's a regulation, it's 80-20. You have to use 80% of the time of the slot, otherwise you're actually losing it. And like you said earlier, the price of the slots in airports like Heathrow is super, super high. Thus, nobody wants to lose them, though they're flying the planes empty. The European Commission just yesterday, so March the 10th, said that they will soften or remove that rule temporarily, which is good. The downside of the European Commission, and it's not an anti-EU stance, it's at a bureaucratic process. They have to legislate first for it to happen. So it's not as if they just decided and it stops. It's still happening. Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, we did Brexit now, but we're still part of the EU. So I think it will apply for the UK as well. But it's true that it's completely nonsensical for the airlines, nonsensical for the environment to fly empty planes just to keep. I mean, exactly, it's absolutely obscene. The airline, I think you told me that as well on a private message. The airline that is probably very much at risk is Norwegian. Don't you think?
I mean, they've been on the ropes for ages, as we've talked about on this podcast. So this is really the last thing that they need. And I don't know if they would get any kind of government intervention.
No, that's the thing.
Because they're not even close to being a flag carrier despite their name.
Exactly. And
I think there's so much private debt there that it wouldn't go to them anyway. It would be a real shame to see them go, but this is going to break so many airlines. And again, those that aren't eligible for this too big to fail bailout, which again is inevitable.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that in a year or so, maybe even less, we're going to be talking about it's completely ridiculous that they bailed out airline A, B, and C again. But this good airline was left to die on the vine because they they weren't big enough. These challenger airlines, who knows?
What will happen probably is the US kind of went into a consolidation because of 9/11, because of the financial crisis. Europe hasn't, also because Europe is fragmented. So Lufthansa is German and Iberia is. I mean, they're part of IAG and groups and stuff, but there's still a lot of airlines. I'm not saying it's bad. It's good for our choice as consumers. I'm pretty sure this will kind of force and fast track consolidation in Europe. You will have airlines, so like a Norwegian, either it crashes completely out or is bought out by IAG. IAG wanted them for a long time, for instance, or smaller airlines like second tier and not in service, but in terms of capacity, there will be a consolidation, which is not good news for us because it means less airlines are probably higher prices, but it will happen. And the same in the low cost ones. If a Wizz Air over leverage, because that's the thing. The over leveraged ones, lots of debt, like Norwegian, will be the first to go or the first to be acquired. And maybe, like there are some airlines, like Lufthansa has a lot of cash. They could acquire someone. Air France KLM, not that much, but they're good. They're not going to disappear, but maybe not have the capacity to buy. But there will be a rejiggling probably happening. And that will trigger what you just said is like some governments are very protective of their national airlines or airlines that go to their markets, and these bailouts suddenly will happen to say, we don't want these other guys to own our airline, so we'll keep them for ourselves. But there will be a consolidation. I'm pretty certain.
And I don't think it's going to be acquisitions or anything like that. It's just going to be they fly B. They just stop.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. SAS apparently is also very.
Now, see, they'll get there. There's no way that they.
They'll get. Yeah, of course.
Which is so ridiculous to say it like that. It's ridiculous that it's that. I know that they provide a vital service, almost to the extent of being like a utility provider, but they are private businesses in many regards, and it's not going to be a fun conversation, and there will be strong arguments on both sides of the table for why this should and should not happen.
Yeah. TAP apparently has issues. In Japan, they will have the bailout, both of them. I'm pretty certain that JAL and ANA will have some kind of bailout. Alitalia, for some reason, Alitalia will survive. I mean, that's always the case, isn't it? It's almost like a rule in aviation now. It's like Al Baker will say something bad about the airlines, and Alitalia survives. These are the two rules that we know about aviation. So the government had said that, we're not going to give them a cent. Yeah, well, that will be the excuse for the government to give them more than a cent, actually. I'm pretty sure. They were actually flying to Milan, and the city was in lockdown. I'm like, why are you flying there?
Yeah.
I just,
why putting people at risk, if this is really the case?
South African, maybe. South African is on the verge of bankruptcy. They've reduced their number of flights before that because they were like having cash issues. So I don't know about now what will happen. Remember Starlux, Alex?
The Taiwanese one, yeah.
they're only flying one aircraft now. Just that's it.
I mean, what a shitty time to start an airline. Right?
Exactly.
You know what's funny is that the last time I was saying to somebody the other day, the last time all this happened in the economic crisis, we were trying to start an airline. So I don't envy them. Surely that they won't get out of this.
Though you mentioned earlier the countries that are doing a good management of the virus itself, Taiwan is a bright example for me because Taiwan is an open democracy, transparent. I mean, don't take that as like the others are not, but they're more authoritarian to various levels. You know, China and Singapore, to various levels, very top down. Taiwan seems to be more open, and they're managing this pretty well, which means that is a blueprint for countries that do not have the capacity to do these top down approaches that, frankly, are not possible in Europe or in the US. Anyway, and the other, of course, open question is Boeing and Airbus. They will probably suffer as well. Yep. And Boeing is not in a great place. No matter if people do not need their MAXs, it's not fantastic. Airports also having issues. The Airports Council International is saying that this is basically unprecedented. So, again, issues. What do you think? Because we had a debate, you and me. What do you think about airport screenings? Not especially in the UK. I mean, in general, what do you think? It's really hard. We're not scientists, but what do you think overall? Are they just like theater, or
I think they're generally theater. I think that the effort versus reward, I think, is so low. That's why the UK hasn't done it. There are, of course, circumstances where if a passenger, they're doing this in Dubai, right? If you come in from Iran or from Bahrain, which actually I think they've cut off completely that air corridor, and a few other places, you go into a separate area and everybody coming off the airplane is screened for, at the very least, temperature.
Russia does that. I think Aeroflot flights are going to a different terminal now if you're coming from at-risk places.
Yeah, and I think that that makes sense. But I think, when SARS happened in Hong Kong, or just in that region in general, they had that in place where they would use the infrared temperature monitoring as you do. You would just keep walking through. But even when we went, whenever I was last there with my family, they checked all the kids' temperatures as we came in, and that was like a year ago.
Japan, you probably remember that. Japan still has the temperature monitor controls on every flight. I think this is why Asia overall, the airports, are more used or prepared to this kind of stuff because they had all these measures in place already. IFRA doesn't have temperature monitoring devices just because they never actually put them in place in the first place. Should they? Hard to tell. I'm not a scientist. We know that there's a lot of asymptomatic cases. A lot of people are barging, even myself, should we do something? Should we especially allow people to fly from Italy? To be frank, I don't know. I don't know. I told you the example earlier about New Delhi. Is it better to have papers to fill and being checked but staying for 6 hours? Then I'm not just going to go.
No, because then you're holding people in close confinement for 6 hours,
It's complicated. A friend of mine just flew back from South Africa and Zimbabwe and etc. And she was telling me how the measures there are super, super harsh. So it feels you are monitored and protected. And she was baffled that landing back in the UK, it was business as usual. To be honest, I don't know. At first, I was very what the hell are we doing in the UK? We're not doing anything. It's not acceptable. We're still flying to Italy. I think yesterday BA cancelled and now Ryanair is the last one to still fly. And I don't know. To be honest, I don't have the data. It feels that something should be done. And they say we have leaflets, but the leaflets that are nowhere to be seen. But is that actually effective in the end, especially for an illness that you might not see, that you might not have a fever on? Now, case is open, and that's what my friend told me when she flew back. She said, 2 gentlemen on our flight literally hacking up a lung. One guy knocked over his drink due to his violence in coughing. So you're it's not really reassuring when you have that. So should you do something? Should you have medics there approaching these people, even if it's a bit inconvenient? That's the thing I think in Japan and in the UK, we have this culture of not inconveniencing people. Is that playing against us? I don't know. To be frank, I don't know. I don't want to take a stance. Yesterday, you would have asked me and said, it's a scandal. Heathrow should do something. They're criminals for not doing anything. And now I'm not sure.
Even they've come out, and the UK government have come out and say, we just don't think it's effective. There are 10 other things that we can be doing and allocating resources to that we think would be far more effective for managing this. So, and it seemed completely reasonable.
Yeah. In the US, the Trump administration is threatening the airlines of fines up to, I think, $250,000 because the airlines are resisting data collection. So basically, the White House wants airlines to say, Alex, you're coming from London to San Francisco. You need to fill a form to tell where you've been in the past. You know what we do in some country, where you've been in the past 14 days. And that's all data collection has to be done. And the airlines are saying, no, it's too costly. We don't have the capacity to do that. And now the White House is threatening the airlines with, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be solved with heavy fines if they don't. So maybe, and when you'll get to the US next time, or guys in the US tell us, maybe you'll get like at least maybe some paperwork to be filled. Because that's what the airline is saying. Oh, we're just going to give passengers a paper form to fill. Again, I'm not sure. Because if it's self-declaratory.
Well, exactly. Because
will
someone's
you
going to
actually
go,
say?
I have a cold versus, oh, I definitely have coronavirus and I'm excited to be quarantined for 14 days.
Yeah, will you actually state that you've been to Italy
Well,
just before?
that's
just
a bit
before,
different.
But I know that's the thing. Look, I understand it. Basically, you have APIs to check that advanced passenger information, so they could actually get the information. But the whole uncertainty now is like, if you've been to Milan a week before the shutdown, which is now 2 weeks ago, whatever, will people take you with? I don't know.
I doubt it.
It's very human to not be willing to put yourself in a quarantine situation. I'm not saying it's good to lie. I'm saying that could happen. It's really hard to know. And these guys know better. People at airports, I hope they have behavioralists, that's a term, to understand what's the human psychology of a Paul or an Alex. I don't lie, but I don't know. The US also, the White House also stopped short of asking elderly to simply not fly. They didn't say that.
You would imagine, and again, we're relying on the collective common sense, but if you're at risk, whether you are elderly or you are, immunodeficient or immune compromised, that you would probably avoid flying an airport. I mean, the U.S. is, they haven't really taken the lead on much of this at all, of course.
They are a tape delay. I think it's
tape delay is a perfect way to put it.
I think in our behaviors, we all are on a tape delay compared to the previous country. We're like, should we believe this? Is it really big? Anyway, it's not all grim. I think because we've been talking about stuff that seems that it's the end of the world. I don't think it's the end of the world. We're going to get through this. The one maybe item I didn't say in opening of 105, and I want to say here as well, because I hear a lot of people saying we should close all the borders, and basically people do not move for like 3 months. A bit of like an anti-globalization stance. And like, this is wrong, because the reason we are going to solve this is because we have globalized research. We know what's coming. We know how to detect it now. We have like scientists working around the clock, and they already made discoveries about this. We will have a vaccine pretty quickly because we all working together, because we're working with people, whether it's from China, South Korea, the Philippines, Brazil, the US, the UK, we're all working together. This is what we do. And I think the anti-globalization stance that kind of reels in with this debate is wrong.
Yeah.
It's very
wrong.
It's just
to try and have that conversation in the midst of all of this, I don't think is massively productive.
Yeah. I didn't ask you, what did you think about this Flybe situation? What are you using? Were you flying them?
I haven't flown them in a while, but I was very, very sad because they do provide a unique service, especially within the UK. They're linking these smaller airports and London to these smaller airports, and it's a tragedy. I'm still not 100% sure what happened because they were acquired by that STOPE, like the Virgin Atlantic group, and it seemed like that was going to be okay for them, but then the amount of debt that they had and the amount of money that they needed to keep going was staggering. And they tried to get deferrals for APD, and people like O'Leary and Willie Walsh freaked out about that, which is just such a dick move. They were going to break eventually, right? And these guys, but it's a tragedy when a local or regional carrier that provides this much needed service, and is it Southampton or one of the local airports? It's like 90% of their traffic.
Oh, wow.
And so they're like, what now? What do we do? We've just lost, basically all of our traffic.
I want to say thank you to Kevin was it on Twitter? Yeah. K8Vin, who sent us a Heathrow approach. He was filming like AvGeeks do, like we do. And he said, I shot this yesterday completely unaware. I was sitting on one of their last flights. So sad. Yeah, it's sad. And the virus clearly kind of worsened the situation, but as you say, they already had like probably unsurmountable amount of debt to kind of overcome. Now the question is, was it also a move to kind of say, okay, let's wipe out that debt and let's maybe Virgin Connect will create something? However, they lost these 12 slots. You mentioned 12 daily flights from Heathrow that BA got magically back, like I explained earlier. I don't know. By the way, talking about slots, Thomas Cook's slots at Gatwick and Bristol were bought by EasyJet. So it's not always BA for 36 million. That I'm completely unaware of. These kind of sell and buying slots. Is that happening at this? I mean, of course, London is, congested, but is it something that is even authorized, like in Paris or Amsterdam or Frankfurt, or not even mentioning, Singapore or whatever? I'm not exactly sure how it works in other countries. We always hear about London because clearly the prices. You remember Oman Air was like $75 million.
Yeah, for the coveted early morning.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. There was an article on the BBC about it when this Air New Zealand one was announced, and it was really interesting to read because I didn't know it was such an active market of this in sometimes trades, bartering, and then sales and acquisitions. It's not regulated. It's not reported. I don't think hugely the operator cares that Heathrow or the CAA here care.
As long as they're occupying it, as I said before,
I don't
which
know.
is now
it's really interesting.
relaxed.
I want to dig into it more because it is kind of interesting about this sort of little gray market economy with staggering numbers as well.
Staggering numbers. Yeah, it's very interesting what you said. The reason that Oman Air's slot was so expensive is because it was an early morning. New Zealand's, to compare, you said $28 million. I think the flight was landing around 11 a.m. and leaving around 3 or 4 p.m., which is a less coveted slot, hence the differential in prices, whereas Oman Air is a super early one, so which is why it was so expensive. Yeah, I'm still sad to see Air New Zealand go. I didn't know that the route, so the ability of you and me to fly to Auckland, has doubled in the past 10 years, probably we know the Middle Eastern, et cetera, but that this specific route that neither of us has taken was less than 7% of the entire market share from London to Auckland. So it was not actually that important.
Not a huge thing for them.
And I think Air New Zealand really wants to kind of go back to a more Pacific Rim focus and like where they are. It's still sad because I love the delivery. Man, the delivery of that aircraft is so awesome. It looks
cool. Yeah, and apparently it's a good product as well.
The announcement was they're still flying until June, but like you said, the slot was sold for October, November. So I don't know what's going to happen in between. Are they still flying it? Are they going to lease it out? No idea. Something will happen. But all this in the context of the third runway, which is seemingly not happening anymore.
No, it's not. There was this court ruling that it wasn't environmentally sound or the due diligence hadn't been done. I think it's not going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen.
I think so too. For the first time, before it was like, they're going to struggle, they're going to fight. For the first time, I believe it's not going to happen at all. No. Yeah, it was the court decided that the studies didn't take into account the Paris Agreement, so the basically environmental global accord, and that, But I don't think it will happen. So what do you think will happen then?
The price of those slots are going to go up, that's for sure.
Do you think it gives a chance to Gatwick to build a second or third one?
No, because I mean, the fallout from this, at least a lot of the editorial opinion, was that not only is this going to preclude any further expansion of airports, it could also impact road and rail projects in the future, HS2 or any expansions of motorways or anything like that, which is not good as far as I'm concerned. I mean, of course, you have to have these environmental impact studies and they have to be done properly, but if you want the economy to grow or in this case recover, there has to be the infrastructure to support it, and there's got to be some middle ground. What the hell else are we going to do if we can't get around? Are we going to go back to subsistence farming? I don't think so. I haven't heard a solution articulated from either camp of how they're going to make this, and not just airports, for everything. Yeah. The world doesn't stop turning because of the Paris Climate Agreement, which is a very, very, very important piece of legislation. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Times of uncertainty, man. This is what I'm telling you. So a little bit more about two products, and then we'll move on to a bit of reviews about our own flights. Again, for some that we've done a bit in the past. We have a huge backlog still. Vistara, that famous joint venture between Singapore Airlines and the Tata Group. They actually are eyeing slots at Heathrow, so they're looking to fly here. And they've just introduced their new product on their delivery of their first Dreamliner, the Dash 9. It looks pretty cool. It looks very Singapore Airlines, but it looks really cool.
I mean, what a pedigree to be able to rely on for when you're reading. I think I saw it on Johnny on the Designer website, and it looks all CGI. I think at this point, I don't think it's real.
Yeah, I think so.
But it looks like, as you say, I mean, it looks strong. It looks really strong. And there's been so many comings and goings on that route between India and Europe. And with airlines dropping like flies on the Indian subcontinent, then it's nice it'll be nice to have a decent provider there, because I think Air India's reputation is is in tatters and the product is not brilliant from what I've heard. I've never experienced it. So
yeah, that's
good luck to them.
I've experienced once in India, and yeah, nah. I mean, it was domestic, so I will hold my judgment. Since we're talking about product, and we already talked like 25 times about Air New Zealand, you've never flown Air New Zealand, right?
Never.
Oh yeah, I've never. Have you seen the pictures of yet a new innovation they're trying to do, which are these like the small V-shaped cabin at the very end of the economy cabin, which will host 6 or 8, I think 6 beds.
No, I haven't seen that.
So it's not the thing, on the cargo under the passengers. It's really like where a bar would sit for a 380, for instance. Of course, we're not talking a 380 here. They will have like almost like like in the train when you're like a small compartment with 6 beds. You actually are lying flat. So it's V-shaped because
where the plane tapers.
No, it's actually inverted from that.
Well, that's
V-shape. I think
interesting. Okay,
it's more. I guess it's mostly to kind of create some sense of privacy. And the plan is to test that product in New Zealand. They're always testing. They already had the sky bed, and they will test this as an economy passenger to rent this out for a certain amount of time. Not sure about the amount of time. The thing is, it's probably better than economy, even for like a couple of hours to go and sleep there. The thing is, it's I don't know if you've ever seen, guys, and you, Alex, you probably have, when you're looking for a new place to rent or a place to buy, people use, and I'm a photographer, I should know about that, use very clever use of lenses to make the places look much bigger. Like your kitchen is massive, and oh my God, it's actually not. It's tiny.
Yeah.
That's a bit of the thing that I've seen here, because the first images made it look like I'm in first class in economy. And then when you look closely, some non-use of these kind of lenses pictures, it seems pretty tight. And I'm like, again, it's better than economy. I don't want to be dissing this product, and they will be testing it, and they probably also don't know. But it's like, you and me, Alex, plus 4 others in a very confined space with people snoring, and will it be attractive?
Doesn't sound like a huge amount of fun.
But maybe it's better than a middle seat.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's the lesser of 2 evils.
So still, it's a bunk bed, basically. It's a bunk bed with a little ladder step. And yeah, it will be interesting to see if it actually... But kudos to Air New Zealand.
Yeah, they're always doing this, aren't they?
They're always trying these new stuff. From future projections to 2 little flight reviews. One of mine's, although... I'm not flying. No, I will fly probably after May. We'll see. I've canceled everything until then. So it's something that I've done in, when was it? In November. And Alex, when was your Maui flight? December. So we're still talking 2019. Thus, as you know, guys, I have this massive backlog of reviews on my own. I will segment them. So this is part of the very crazy trip I've done, which is I've left London. I went to Lisbon for not Web Summit, but it was the day before Web Summit because everybody's there. I don't like Web Summit. I don't think either Alex does. Nope. But it was, practical because everybody was there, so I could make a few meetings, and then left from Lisbon to New York, had a meeting in New York. So I landed at I think 9 p.m. in New York at JFK. I had the next day a meeting, and at 8 p.m. the next evening, I was on that very long Singapore flight in first class from JFK to Singapore via Frankfurt. I stayed 2 days in Singapore, and then I flew back with Cathay Pacific first as well. That was a reward flight via, of course, Hong Kong. The times where I was still flying. I will not cover these 2. These are the most interesting I know, but I want to cover a little bit of TAP because it's just interesting, because I've read so many things about TAP these past few weeks. Of course, first is David Neilman, who just finally announced the name of his new airline, Breeze, and not Moxie. David Neilman is this hero of the aviation industry. He's created so many airlines. I didn't know that David Neilman was part of the consortium that owns 40% of TAP, actually.
Yeah.
But apparently they're not in good terms. The government that owns the rest and that consortium are not in good terms, meaning that Lufthansa, United are looking into buying that bit. So TAP would be brought back into a more Star Alliance, a part of Star Alliance, berth, which I don't think is great news for customers because TAP is very cheap to the US. Mm-hmm. You have to go to Lisbon, which is for some probably out of the way, but they have an interesting play here. Is it a low cost? No, but that's the other thing I wanted to react on. I've seen a lot of people calling it almost a low cost. And I disagree with that statement, but it's certain that the prices, guys, just look for the prices, are very low, which again, to the point I just made, is not a great great, maybe news for people like us that if United and Lufthansa take the place of David Neilman in the consortium that owns TAP, probably they will not want to have like a huge competitor on their very cool US to Europe routes, and they might increase the prices of TAP.
Yeah.
Now, the product itself. So London to Lisbon was a 320neo, so that was a very brand new aircraft. Is it low cost? No, but yes, it has some of the things we see nowadays. You know, there's almost no galley. There's like a simple, very thin wall between the first row and the very front of the aircraft. They're maximizing the number of seats, obviously no IFE, etc. But you know what? Very nice flight. The crew especially was so nice and gentle and kind and lovely. I mean, we know that Portuguese are great.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, it's rare to have that quality of... they're so amenable. It was fantastic. I kind of liked also the uniform of, especially on the women. The uniform of the men is a bit more bland. There's a business class-ish. Again, it's, you know, we know in Europe, I'll address this one of these days, why we don't have a proper business class in Europe, but there's no divider between business and economy. More to the point of that kind of low cost feeling, but again, it's no low cost. They simply ask for passenger and economy not to go to use a lavatory in the front, which is pretty well respected. So I mean, it works. There were power sockets. The food was great. It was a breakfast because it was an early flight. Honestly, very, very good experience. I would totally do it again. Much better, and I know they're sometimes, friendly food. Much better than Iberia. For me, there's no comparison. I would fly TAP over Iberia every day, very, very easily. I arrive in Lisbon airport. We'll cover that in one episode. I don't think we've done it. Of course, it's absolutely crazy because it's the day before Web Summit. There's 75,000 people arriving at Lisbon, so the airport is overwhelmed. There's queue for taxis and Ubers and everything. You have to wait forever. But anyway, it's okay. I learned through the cab driver that I had that they're building a new Lisbon airport, however, which I didn't know. It's apparently opening in 4 years, and it's on the other side of that very famous bridge. I haven't looked into it, but apparently that's the plan. I stayed a few hours in Lisbon, and that's interesting because I was to fly to the US with the 330 Neo. So I had two Neos. It's a Neo set of flights. And I was very interested to try this because a lot of people say it's a cool product. They have a light flight product. Not that I would need to sleep because it was like an afternoon flight, and with a differential of time, I would arrive in the evening. So first, a very quirky experience that I had, and I think I was, I was texting you. When I was at Heathrow, I was trying to, so first, when I was in London at home, I was trying to check in via their mobile app, couldn't. So I went to the check-in counter at Heathrow, even though I didn't have any luggage with me to check. And they wouldn't allow me to get a boarding pass.
That's weird.
The computer, you know how it is, everything is automated. The computer would literally say, do not board, visa required. And I was like, I have a visa waiver, the ESTA thing, and I was showing them the ESTA. Even though I had this, it still wouldn't let me. They say, yeah, but we have no. So I argued my way in. I said basically to the person at Heathrow, I said, look, right now, the first flight is going to Lisbon, which is part of the EU. I don't need any proof of identification besides my ID to go there. Allow me to board this one, and I'll deal with whatever happens at the second bit when I actually need to fly to the US. I mean, if they refuse me in Lisbon, I'll just go back. Meaning for me, the experience of entering Lisbon airport that second time after my meetings was like, oh my God, will I be... Well, I was able... That's very quirky. Remember, I told you I was unable to get the boarding pass on my phone for the flight.
Yeah.
But actually, and I don't know if it's a bug or a feature, when I tried to, the system refused to give me my first boarding pass, but strangely gave me my Lisbon to JFK boarding pass.
Of course.
So I had actually something on my phone. So my plan was like, I'm going to pretend nothing happened in London, and I'm going to keep showing my mobile boarding pass. I went through all the checks with this one, and I was able to board. I will never understand why I was not allowed to board at first in London and why all this commotion. But again, I don't know if it's a bug or a feature. Maybe I would have gotten into trouble. I didn't, because obviously I was clear to fly to the US, but there you go. So it's strange.
It is weird. It's
a bit stressful.
You're right. It is stressful. That's the one thing where, there's a third party there with just relying on the data that they have in front of them with which they can't do anything about. So yeah, it is stressful.
And I just explained you the route I was doing. I was going in New York for 22 hours. I was doing this huge flight to Singapore, landed at 6:40, and at 9 a.m. I was on stage. I'm like, if it fails in Lisbon, the rest is, I don't know what happens. I cannot do all this. It's and I had paid cash for some of this stuff, obviously. And, and if I don't go to a place, maybe the client will never pay me. And so I was like, oh my God, this is all. But anyway, it went through. Lisbon Airport will cover it another time. The TAP Premium Lounge isn't too bad. And then I'm in that 339 Neo. Excuse me. No, it's not the virus. So it's staggered seat, the kind of ones we see everywhere, like, reverse herringbone. The only difference is they're very tight, as in they are very close to each other. So if I had to be flying, someone like me would probably not like completely the position, but it's really not bad. It's a lie flat seat. It's not the best, but it's much better than the Delta I've done in Asia, for instance. Not a lot of storage, but they still give you an amenity kit, which is okay. Have the basics. It's very colorful. And again, the crew, super nice. This super tall Portuguese guy with a perfect English accent, super well trained, looks you in the eyes for every interaction. Really, I mean, this is better than Iberia for sure, and this is close to one of the best experiences in a national carrier, if you'd like. I've never seen that. I mean, SAS could learn one thing or two because they really suck. The one thing that was very funny, I don't know when was the last time you've flown, they literally told us 5 times pre-takeoff that we shouldn't use our MacBook 15-inch computer. So we know there's a series of them that probably have a problem with the battery, but it's not once, 5 times. They're like, please do not charge them. Please do not open them. Please. I was like, okay, well, it's the new Samsung whatever. And they added the use of power banks is strictly forbidden. They do not allow you to use it. Yeah, so there you go. Again, great service, great food, super homey and filling. You know how like Portuguese food can be. I was very pleased with that. And maybe at times it felt that, there was no one, the crew wasn't there. But if you went to go to the galley, there was always someone there. They were very nice. So no, honestly, it worked. It's clearly not an ME3, a Cathay, a Singapore or whatever, but it is a nice product. And the price is unbeatable. Man, the price, London to New York in business, admittedly with the layover and adds you some time, single way, was 700 quid.
That's incredible.
I mean, come on. First of all,
for all 4 segments.
Only one way.
Oh, yeah.
But still.
No, incredible.
First of all,
incredible.
Most of the airlines would punish you for doing another return, and 700. I was like, what? And it's a proper business class. Again, it's probably not AA or whatever, but I cannot not recommend it. I mean, really nice. So there you go. And I see the TWA hotel right there, and I can almost touch it, but no. One day I'll be able to go there. And I landed at the JetBlue terminal, so that's T5, right?
Yes, very nice terminal too.
And apparently TAP interlines with JetBlue, so that is another reason for you guys, if you love JetBlue, to do TAP. So no, honestly, very good one. The rest of the trip, guys, in the next, maybe not even the next, in a follow-up episode. So now we're going to go to, but before, since I just mentioned Breeze, what do you think about Breeze? The new, do you like the logo and the livery?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean,
it's fine.
It is fine. It's one of those things where
the Alex word is back, guys. It's fine.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I think if anybody can do this, it's him. So who am I to question somebody with such a pedigree, to be completely honest?
The world's nicest airline.
You know what?
That's what he wants to do, but maybe, yeah, we'll see. They're starting probably in a few months. I think with in 195s and the 220s will come next year. So, to you now, how did you go to Maui or to Kakalula? I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I have no idea. So how did you go to Maui? How did you go to Hawaii? First, you had to stop somewhere. I guess there's no direct flight from London.
No, we went London to San Jose, and I'm sure that flight was full of incident. In fact, I think it almost certainly was, probably involving my family in one regard or another. But we flew to San Jose and stayed nearby at one of the airport hotels because the flight, I think, to Maui was about 9 a.m. And we did Hawaiian Airlines because I think they were just the cheapest and had the best options for out of San Jose. I think that's the 10th busiest route out of Maui is to San Jose. The others are intra-island or to LA and San Francisco.
Okay, wow.
It was a 321.
I see a smirk on your face when you say that, so I'm waiting for the...
No. I honestly, I mean, I'll preface this. The TLDR was, it was a very nice flight indeed. I liked it a lot. We had this rather strange configuration where we were not at the bulkhead, but it's one of those things where you're at the emergency exit facing the cabin crew. There's two seats facing, and then there's a third. So that window seat has got unlimited leg room.
Huge leg room, which
was perfect for us because we could get out and take our youngest daughter, kids to the bathroom without having to step over, it just made life much, much easier. A little bit of space to have things spread out. Hawaiian are a full service airline that augment with paid for service as well.
I see.
So you got food, you got drinks, and Hawaiian snacks and stuff, which were really, really nice. And then you could buy more food, Japanese, Hawaiian. I mean, if you're familiar with Hawaiian food, it's very heavily influenced by Japan. So that was really good. And there was Wi-Fi, but not internet. So it was just streaming to your device. And it was a comprehensive library of content, which was really, really good. The crew were very nice and very helpful. When we took off, again, I find this really annoying. And I can understand why they didn't do this. But it was a 5.5 hour flight. And nothing from the flight crew until hours and hours into the flight. Although the cabin crew came on after all of the boarding announcements, the standard boarding announcements, saying the captain has said that we're going to have some pretty heavy turbulence for the first hour of the flight because there's a lot of jet stream. And that they won't be putting the seatbelt sign off and they won't be able to do any of the service for a while. So if you need to go to the bathroom, do it now before we push back. And they were right. I mean, it was choppy with some pretty heavy sway for a good hour. But then, as so many U.S. airlines, they don't turn the seatbelt sign off. But people then, after a couple of hours and nature calls, they just ignore it. But the service generally was really, really, it was friendly and in some regards and really disinterested and surly and bored in others. But at that balance of full service and paid for, it was actually kind of what I like. You're not going to starve to death like you would on a low cost carrier. I would never do a flight of that length on a low cost carrier or a no frills airline. So having that, we're going to feed you often and feed you good snacks and drinks, and also then being able to buy hot meals as well worked really, really well. So I was impressed. And of course, you see nothing. There's no land between you from the west coast of the United States and Hawaii. There's nothing. So it's just sea. So you don't see anything until you're at final, which is weird. I haven't done that in a while, where it's of course, when you're flying across the Atlantic, you're constantly flying over Greenland and northern Canada and then Iceland. And so you're constantly seeing things. And even over the Pacific, you're Alaska and then northern Russia and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I've done myself the other way. I've done Tokyo to Honolulu. So it's a bit similar. There's nothing in there. Oh, there's an island. Yeah. There's land. It's true.
It's very, very strange. And so you're coming into approach and there's nothing. And all of a sudden there's, beautiful islands and you can see the water and all of that. But the way that you come in, you kind of fly the standard route, which is apparently, from what I understand, done for noise abatement.
Okay.
And you fly through this valley, because obviously it's volcanic. All of Hawaii is volcanic, so there's big peaks. And you're flying through this valley, and the turbulence, I have never experienced anything like it in my life. And it's not like turbulence at altitude, where there's no frame of reference and there's no... This is, you're going really slow. The plane is fully dirty for landing, even gear down. And you are dropping and you're going up because these updrafts are hitting the... And you are just all over the place. I have never... And for me, it was really fun.
I was about to say that.
You're never unsafe. Yeah. I mean, actually, you know what? To be honest... That kind of turbulence is statistically more dangerous than clear air turbulence at 38,000 feet. And there was audible gasps throughout the cabin, even from the cabin crew who are it's often like this, but this is, you're getting a really good demonstration of what we experienced. And you're just flopping all over the place. And then you do this turn and then, I think it's almost a 180 and you come back on the other side of this mountain and you land. And we were bobbing and weaving until the wheels touched the ground. So it was incredible airmanship by the crew to do this because it was windy on that side of the island the whole time we were there. But it was a wild ride. My daughter hated I mean, she's 2, so all she felt was the drops and the
chop. Yeah.
But my eldest son, who's 9, thought it was just the greatest thing in the whole wide world, because he was like lifting up in his seat against the seatbelt, and it was, that was my first time flying into Maui. I would love to hear from anybody if this is kind of a normal thing or if what we experienced was kind of unusual. But it was crazy, and then the airport itself is. The terminal that you walk into, you could be going into Oakland or San Jose, but when you come, it's just like a normal American terminal. Yeah. Except for when you come into baggage claim, it's all open. It's like a Southeast Asian airport, which is lovely. Yeah. I love, like, you're feeling the breeze and the warmth and all of that, but you deplane, at least for these flights, using a gate into a standard U.S. domestic terminal. You go, and then you come out into this, or downstairs into this lovely, airy, very, very busy area.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures while you're talking to understand. Yeah. Wow.
The bags took for flipping ever to appear. I don't know why. It is what it is.
It's not such a big airport in terms of passenger traffic. I mean, it is.
I don't know. It can't be gargantuan. I think it's probably... No, actually, to be honest with you, I don't know.
5-6 million per year.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's an old statistics.
And it didn't feel justified in having that delay, but that is what it is. And you have this lovely, and so, if you're going to be stuck waiting somewhere, that's kind of the place you want to be, where you feel the nice tropical breeze coming in and all of that.
I had a similar memory of parts of Honolulu airport, which is some of it is like, big buildings, and some of it like as you walk outside, which is really nice.
So, cool. That part was nice. And there we rented a car, and there's like this little tram that takes you between, it's no distance. On the way back, we walked it because it was much easier than waiting for this stupid tram. But and then when you come back to check in, it's the same thing. It's completely open to the elements, and you actually have to, if you're going to, I can't remember if it's because you're leaving Hawaii or if you're going back to California because of the strict agricultural restrictions into California, but I think it's also because of Hawaii. Your bags are screened for anything, and then they're tagged before you go and check in. And then once you get into the terminal, the amenities are, and then actually you do another agriculture check before you get to your gate. But it's
wow.
It's the boarding areas and the gates themselves are nothing at all to write home about. They're very kind of tired American domestic terminal, but they, it's absolutely made up for with these kind of other parts of the experience.
How was your flight back? Was it also as bumpy?
Well, taking off it was, because it was just windy.
Was it also 321?
321, and we had a similar seating arrangement as well. Actually, no, we're lucky because it was reasonably quiet. So we had 6 across for the 5 of us, or 4 and a bit.
Okay, cool.
Interestingly, and I never got a chance to figure out, that our cruising altitude was 26,000 feet, which is very low. Maybe it was low, 24,000 feet.
I was about to say.
It just seems low. I don't know why. Maybe that's where the jet streams were. But looking at historical data, because I'm that much of a nerd, that doesn't seem normal.
I see.
So who knows? You're coming from the West Coast, and you enter the approach that everybody else is doing, coming up from LA and to get into San Jose. So it was fine. I liked my experience with Hawaiian Airlines. They weren't particularly cheap, but it was a good experience, and I would definitely fly them again, because it's that nice balance, like I said, of lower cost but also not quite full service.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because there was many times where I was hesitating about using them or not. For instance, I said earlier, I was supposed to be in Tokyo next week, and the week after I was supposed to be in San Francisco. Again, all this is canceled. But going from Tokyo to San Francisco, one of the cheaper options was to use Hawaiian to do a stopover in Honolulu and continue. And I always hesitate. First of all, I'd rather do like a direct. Of course, I'd rather do it on a Japanese airline. But it's interesting that you say that, because I might actually try one day. I mean, guys, if any one of you has done this, like going from Japan to the US or the reverse, using Hawaiian, can you tell me how it is, and either in economy or premium or whatever? I'm very curious.
I would love to know. Yeah,
I've always read that they are like not a full like super premium carrier, but they're not a low cost either. Like exactly the way you describe it, which unless I had like someone like you telling me, kind of always like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
You know, like, which is why I was just mentioning about TAP earlier. Like when they say it's kind of a low cost, I'm like, is it really? No,
Yeah.
it's not. It's not easy. I'm still flying in something that has food, it has nice amenities that, yeah, it's not Singapore or even AA, but it's good. I will be flying that again. So I would try Hawaiian actually. And how was Hawaii, man? I mean, I've only been to Honolulu and nearby. How was Maui? Was it?
Yeah,
fun?
great. We really enjoyed our time there. It's
Nice.
my kind of place where you wake up at 3:00 in the morning because of jet lag, and you walk out onto the balcony. It's still that lovely warm breeze, and I love the food. And it's an expensive place to exist for obvious reasons, but I really liked it. I liked it on many, 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 many levels. So we had fun.
Oh, and the one thing that we said at the very top of the show we haven't addressed. Why is it called OGG?
Ah, yes. Og.
That's very strange.
It is because
I was looking for the airport and I was like, this can't be it. He told me Maui. So first it's Kalu. Again, I'm not going to even try to pronounce that. And then I was like, OGG. Tell me.
So they have this, because I didn't know, but in the terminal, in the boarding areas, they have this huge mural to this person, Bertram J. Jimmy Hogg, Hogg, who was a native of Hawaii, of the Hawaiian Islands, and an aviation pioneer. So he worked for what is now Hawaiian, and he flew like the Sikorsky, then the DC-3, and then the DC-9 all the way through into the 60s. So he was really a Hawaiian aviation pioneer. So that's I think a very appropriate, because the airport is named. It doesn't have like an official name other than what it is, but it's rather a nice
it is.
Homage to someone who really was quite literally a pioneer for Hawaiian aviation.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Mystery
Well,
soul.
how cool is that to have an IATA code named after you? Not just an airport.
Exactly.
Airports are transient things. They come and go, but that will
that
transfer.
is really
that will be there
cool.
forever.
That is amazing. I love this.
Yeah.
Also meaning that the airport is not that old then, because if the guy was, you said, flying until the 60s, it cannot be that old that the IATA code is dated back. They didn't probably change it just for
1952.
that. Okay, cool. Well, there you go. Well, I need to go to Maui, man.
Yeah, I liked it.
I
I want to go back to Hawaii and explore more of it. It's something, that atmosphere. I know you could find it in other parts of the world, but it's definitely an environment in which I can be very happy.
And look, these days we need to be on an island to hide from the virus anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially because the weather in London has been the crappiest weather for a long time. We've been having rain nonstop for the past, 2 weeks? My plants outside love it, but me, I'm like, no. I mean, it makes it easier to isolate and social distance because then I don't want to go out, actually. Okay, I'm not going to ask you about your next flights. And man, I really hope they happen because my forecast is everything is cancelled. And I want to keep the surprise for the next shows. I also want to say to you guys, because I know a lot of people have reached out, can I be a guest? Can I be a co-host? I might still do some of the co-hosts when, for instance, when Alex is traveling, to keep the pace of having every 2 weeks-ish. I might sometimes invite some of you guys whilst Alex is away doing his thing or exploring other islands of the Pacific. Invite some of you, so there will be like a bit of revolving. So keep asking us, and we'll have also a few guests. Actually, we planned one next month. So there you go. I think for me, again, I have no plans to travel until the recording of the next episode. And you guys and Alex will make me jealous because of your pictures of you traveling. I'm just going to stay home this year.
Live vicariously through us.
You know what? I'm probably going to lose all my status this year if I continue happening.
Well, at least you won't die of this particular ailment.
So from coronavirus land, safe travels, everyone. And
Safe
happy travels,
travels,
Alex. Thank you, Alex.